Yo guys, Jens here, and today I'm gonna talk about the evolution of class design and how it's affecting Arena. So I watched AWC yesterday, a little bit while I was farming in Classic, and there was this one game that reached like 86% dampening and 20-minute game. And when you think about it, it's just actually insane. How can healers and DPSers reach that amount of mortal strike effects? They are doing less 86% healing, so which makes kind of your damage be 86% more effective. And I have the answer, you probably guys already know, and it's called cooldowns. So this is the first point I want to touch, since not really rats, but since Cataclysm, they've been adding more and more defensives, more and more offensive, and more stuns to the game, um, and that has been hurting PvP. Now, you can say it's extremely skilled to have players having everything. So, for example, Red Paladin having a stun, and having, for example, a blind and having a kick, while everyone else has the same. But it's not really the case, and it's not really what we've been seeing lately in World of Warcraft. What this amount of tools, if you want to call them, makes it's for a degenerate kind of gameplay where you always have an answer to what the other player does. And now while this feels like it's kind of right, where you can just counter what the other player is doing, it really, in my opinion, it's really not. And we've been seeing this lately in the past few years in competitive PvP, especially where players just turtle, just wait for dampening because they know that, for example, if they go on the Shadow Priest, they have dispersion, which doesn't allow them to kill, and even if they don't have dispersion, they have fade, and even through that, they still have the void swap, the soul swap, whatever the they can swap their health. You know what I'm talking about. Um, and I think this is one of the many reasons why World of Warcraft Arena has not been good for many years now. I think the last good expansion in terms of PvP was Cataclysm. I see where people come from when they say MoP was a good expansion, but in my opinion, if you okay, if let's make it extremely simple, like or extremely clear. I think MoP was a good expansion. I don't think it was WoW-like, and I don't think it was attractive enough in terms of PvP for me, because it's clear what you gotta do in certain situations. So, for example, if you're a healer in MoP, Reso Druid, and the warrior pops Recklessness, you know what you gotta do. Or Avatar, you know what you gotta do. You gotta pop that Iron Bark, right? This is kind of like a script. It's when, in my opinion, the scripts started to appear in World of Warcraft. And the script is, well, in movies you know, but in World of Warcraft, a script is if X pops Y, I will pop Z, for example. So this allows really not really bad players, but players that weren't previously weren't that good. It allowed them to improve because they are good, not really good in terms of situation. Oh my God, situation awareness, but because they know, or they have an add-on that tells them that someone pops something, so they know they gotta counter that. And that has been in the game since MoP, pretty much. It was when everyone had a kick, everyone had the defensive, everyone had an offensive cooldown. So In my opinion, that is a really bad design, and we've seen yesterday a game going to 86% dampening because at some higher ratings, people understand they gotta do to counter the other team. This creates a problem, which again you saw it yesterday. No one can die until the healing is weak enough or the damage is high enough by default, and that's bad. And I think that's one of the many problems with the World of Warcraft PvP is even if you fuck up many times in a game, you are able to cover that, or your healer is able to cover that with cooldowns. Now, at lower ratings, you don't feel that much because healers usually are not really good at trading cooldowns. Players are overall not really good at covering offensive cooldowns with defensive cooldowns. And that's why at lower ratings it seems like the game is super bursty, and at higher ratings it feels like the game never ends. I've had games of 15 minutes because my class, I play a main warlock, my class can't really finish. Now, this is where I think World of Warcraft PvP has been suffering for years. And it's not new. Legion was kind of a mixed bag. But since BFA, we haven't had, since season 1, I think, we haven't had like a season where sustained damage is king. And that is a main issue with the game, in my opinion, right now. So TBC is coming, and what people will realize is that sustained damage in TBC is king, and I think a lot of players won't adapt that fast, at least, to TBC meta, which is whatever you do in arena actually matters. So if if you go behind the pillar, it matters because you don't have an external to cover you. So if you go into a bad spot or you get into a bad position, you can actually die. For example, as a warrior, you don't even have a shield wall until the Wrath of the Lich King. You don't have any of these cooldowns on um, on TBC. So your defensive cooldown is pretty much just go into defensive stance and pop a shield and sword or whatever. Now, this, in my opinion, is a way better design because it makes it so the game is kind of unpredictable. You can be winning a game like 90% of the time and then do a really stupid decision as a warrior to go behind a pillar against a Shadow Priest rogue, for example, and you just die. And in my opinion, this is how the game should be unpredictable. If you do a really bad mistake, you should be punished by it. Not always by dying, but at least by getting so behind that you need to outplay the enemy team. And this is another thing that I want to talk about, which is outplay versus counterplay. Now, it feels like the two notions are together, so you counter something and you're outplaying the enemy, right? Not really, especially not in Shadowlands. And if you check me on Twitter or forums, you know what I'm gonna say. Feign that. Feign that it's the perfect um, example of counterplay without any type of outplay. So I main an affliction warlock, I dot the hunter, and every 15 seconds I think they can just feign that my dots without any type of risk of getting killed. They just press it every 15 seconds. They have dots, they press it. And this is the type of abilities that have been increasing in number in terms of World of Warcraft PvP, where you counter something so hard that if you lose, it means that the other player should have won, I don't know, 10 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago, and it just doesn't make the live game fun for me, at least. And I'm not really saying just remove Feign Death or anything like that. I'm just giving you an example. Or Fade for Shadow Priest or even Holy Priest, where they just Fade Mass Dispel and their whole team is fine. This is the type of stuff that doesn't exist prior to MOP, where you don't really need to think about what you're doing. You just do it because it's in the script. So, for example, let's compare Feign Death right now to Feign Death back in TBC. And let's say I'm trying to fear a hunter. Good hunters will silence shot me, then they will Feign Death, then they will be already near a pillar to stop the fear, right? And while they are doing this, they are doing damage, they are controlling the game. And this is outplaying someone. It's using the tools you have that don't really counter that person. So Feign Death doesn't really counter me. It's just outplaying me, you know? And this is a big difference in today's gaming in terms of World of Warcraft, where you can't really say someone outplayed you because they have the tools to do it. It's just on the script. So if a hunter gets fully dotted, he knows I need to fade that. It's on the script. But back in the day, if the hunter gets fully dotted and he feign that randomly, it's just stupid because then I get a full fear without even trying. And this is the type of things that have been increasing in the game. And for example, another example, if you play a caster, you will know what I'm talking about, which is demon hunters, or I don't know, almost any other melee. You fake the kick and you get stunned. Did the demon hunter outplayed you? No, you actually outplayed the demon hunter, but you don't feel like you did. Why? Because they have another tool to stop the cast. And with this, I'm not saying demon hunters are OP or melee are OP. I don't think they are, but it doesn't make it right. It doesn't make that class design good. Just because a class it's not OP doesn't make the ability to stop casts randomly, not really randomly, but to stop the casts even though they got outplayed. And this is why I want TBC so much, because stuff like one of the most skilled interactions in the game is being kind of put in the corner, which is melee versus caster, the fake kicking. It's, in my opinion, it's what shows a good player from a different from a bad player. It's the ability to fake cast one, two, or three kicks even, and you don't really feel rewarded. I've faced so many demon hunter resto shamans that I just fake them, and then the demon hunter stuns me. The shaman uses grounding behind the pillar, and I'm like, why am I playing this? Or, for example, I faced a lot of resto druids who just dispel my dots, go into bear form, and frenzied regen the damage. And in my opinion, this is not only for warlocks, by the way. If you're a warrior, for example, and warriors are incredibly strong in Shadowlands, but if you're a warrior and you're facing like a druid, and you pop Avatar, he just pops bark skin on himself or Iron Bark and he's fine. And this is the reason why we have so long games in AWC, because you have counters. You don't really have outplayability. The outplayability, for example, there with the warrior popping avatar and the druid just trying to incap, warrior uses Zerk Rage, druid stuns him and into a clone. Like, and then the warrior has a way to stop the stun through die by the sword, but it's a risk versus reward because then you can kill the warrior. But that doesn't really happen because the druid doesn't really need to do that until really high dampening. So those are the type of plays that I kinda miss in World of Warcraft, is risk versus rewards. Uh, Being able to use a defensive cooldown for every offensive cooldown, or being able to use every offensive cooldown every 2 minutes, is hurting the game. It's really hurting the game. And the let me think about this one. And oh, how do you say it, man? Let me Google it. Uh, Inability. Okay, this one was a hard one. The inability to just do so much constant pressure, and warriors are actually good in this, but doing so much constant pressure that you can't keep to the script, right? It's just it's just sad. I think the only class that can actually do this is Windwalkers, where without cooldowns they can actually force defensives. But even then, I think if you think about it, they actually still need to use cooldowns like the clones. The clones are cooldowns. But yeah, uh, the I think the game right now is in a really shitty spot in terms of PvP. I've been thinking about this for years. I think the last good expansion in terms of PvP was WODs. Oh, not WOD, fuck me. Was Cataclysm. And if you go check the last BlizzCon from MOP, where Laser Chicken won, you will see what I mean with um, with the script thing where it was God Comp against LST2. The God Comp just went behind the pillar every 30 seconds and then they came out, they tried to kill. The LST always had an answer for it, and it made the game super boring to watch. I watched it live and I never forgot how bored I was. And if you watch any AWC gameplay right now, except for maybe BM Hunter teams, because BM Hunter, even though it's retarded, and I hate BM Hunters, it's actually the only class that actually has the high sustained damage, even higher than Warriors. And if you gave the BM Hunter damage to every other class, the game would be way more fun. Because you can't really trade cooldowns effectively against the BM Hunter because the damage is just so insane. But it's actually how the game should be, which is kind of funny. And it comes across as OP, but it's not really OP. It's how every class should be. If a warlock has full dots on a whole team, the whole team should be rotting. If a shadow priest is actually dotting two people and single target using single target damage on one, you should feel it, and you don't. And that is a huge problem, and that's due to class design and class tuning. You have way too many cooldowns, and outside of those cooldowns you don't do any damage. And that's why I'm waiting for TBC. I want the damage to matter, I want the CC to matter, and I want the cooldowns to actually matter. And yeah, um, sorry for the little rant, but I'm just so done watching really bad gameplay. Like watching a caster faking a melee just to get stunned two times after. It's just so boring. It just makes the whole fake casting and kicking kind of irrelevant, to be honest. And even if you get kicked as a caster, let's be honest, you don't really get punished unless like you're really low on HP, which you shouldn't until at least 20% dampening. Like I don't know, it feels like, and even healers, I forgot to say this, but if you face a disc priest, like they have two schools of healing. What the fuck? Like I mean, really, what the fuck? You kick them on shadow, they penance or shield. You kick them on penance, they fucking shadow man. Like the class design is all over the place. I think there's way too many offensive and defensive cooldowns, and I think classes don't do enough damage, except BM hunters, don't do enough damage to make the game interesting. And on the other end, you have like classes straight up counter other classes, not really outplaying. If you're a hunter and you think you're outplaying these warlocks, bro, you're fucking wrong. You're just the hardest counter I've ever faced in World of Warcraft as a hunter, as a warlock. It's actually BM Hunter Holy Priest. I remember back in the day facing Resto Shaman in Rat, Resto Shaman DK, and thinking, holy shit, this game is really hard. This is a really hard setup. comparing that to what I've been facing lately in live whenever I play twos, it's actually insane. For a warlock to win against one of those, to win against that comp, they need to play it so wrong. It's I've never seen this in World of Warcraft, and that is actually what made me to make this video. Is just I want every class to have the tools to outplay without without countering. You know, let's look at rogue versus warrior, for example, and this is going to be the last example. A rogue versus warrior in a duel. The rogue pops evasion, which is a counter to physical damage. And what does the warrior has? He has overpower, which does a lot of damage. So it's not a straight counter. You always have an answer for what they do, even though the answer is not a straight counter. And this is what I think it's missing. We need class design that it doesn't completely counters like shadow resistance aura, like dragon scale armor for hunters as well, which just flat reduces damage taken by dots. Like, you shouldn't be countering, you should be outplaying. So for example, a really good example of this in TBC, it's a Taroin druid war stomping a rogue to get a clone. On the first, when you think about it, it's just a counter. You can't, as a rogue, counter that, right? Well, no, it's actually wrong. You can have a macro to swap your weapon with the mind numbling, shift the war stomp, and the clone won't be in time. So you pretty much get stunned for nothing. So you have a way to outplay the enemy druid. It's not a counter from the rogue because you actually need to be pretty fast, and the druid just doesn't have a straight counter to rogues. And this is what is missing. Is just little ways to outplay the enemy player. And I, yeah, and I think that has kind of been gone from the game since MOP. Like that little interaction between the rogue and the druid, the war stomp and the shiv with mind numbling on the war stomp, and getting then into DR with stun as well. It's more skilled than anything in Shadowlands. Anything. But yeah, guys, I've ranted for long enough. Thanks for watching, and fucking hell, just release pre-patch for TBC because I want to gear up my other stuff. But yeah, guys, peace. Thanks for watching.